everybody, welcome back to the Glass Seats podcast. This is episode 10, and this is our show where two hockey aficionados discuss their perspectives on headlines surrounding the NHL, including recent stories, game highlights, league culture, and other topics trending amongst the fans. This is Viddy.
My name is Mrinal, and this week in hockey, the Stanley Cup Final has been a blowout.
Yep.
2 games are done. Game 3 is going on right now while we're recording on Thursday, June 8th. Vegas has won both of them dominantly. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts?
It's going exactly as I expected. I said Vegas in 5, and I think this is one of the only series that I could actually predict the game count, and I think it's going to be first 3 go to Vegas. Florida will pull out a game somewhere, go back to Vegas, and expect another blowout. Mm-hmm. Because that's just how the series has gone so far.
You know, I'm not quite ready to write off Florida just yet. Mm-hmm. You know, I said last show, hey, we might see Florida struggle out of the gate. They've been because they swept Carolina. They've kind of been off for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And you could kind of see it in their game. Bobrovsky didn't look quite set, and he's a big part of that Florida defense. Mm-hmm. And the way Florida plays, they kind of rely on this chaos, right?
Yeah.
They'll throw big hits. They'll jump in passing lanes. They'll throw a pass straight up the middle, like a long stretch pass or like a flip pass, right? To get it out of the zone really quickly. So they rely on that confusion and that chaos. But when you play like that, if your team itself is kind of out of sync, it's not going to work, right? Your passes to nowhere. You're going to be holding on that puck just a fraction too long, and a Vegas player will come and take it. And that's exactly what we saw in the first 2 games, right? Mm-hmm. Game 3, which we've been kind of following here while setting up for this recording, has been a lot closer. Mm-hmm. It's 2-1, start of the 3rd period. And this is kind of more what I expected. Yeah. You know, this is how Florida plays. 1-goal games where they'll suddenly pull a goal out and try and score, right? This is the kind of game Florida likes to play. Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, those first 2 were rough, but I can see Florida getting back into rhythm now. And I think depending on what happens on this game, if they win this one, I could see them tying it up, and then we got a best of 3.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think tonight is a must-win for Florida. I think they should treat this like an elimination game because they know Vegas is that team. Vegas is the real deal. And honestly, I would even go as far as to say you can't go back to Vegas with a 3-1 deficit. That's too dangerous. And I mean, in general, like I'm glad you said, you know, Vegas is very coordinated, I guess you could say. Yeah. And the last time, honestly, I can remember seeing a franchise this coordinated was glad you put the jersey up, was Detroit in the late 2000s.
Oh yeah,
that Datsuk, Datsuk, Zetterberg. Oh my god, that team was unstoppable. Like everything was perfect. It was like art on ice, and that's what it looks like with Vegas right now.
I think you're discounting some of the teams we've seen in the past. That was almost 15 years ago now. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, even Colorado last year was very, very coordinated.
Yeah.
Tampa for their cups kind of played a rough and tumble type of game.
I think so too, yeah.
But, you know, the season they lost to Columbus in the regular season, they were very, very that type of tight and coordinated, you know, no extraneous passes anywhere. Right. So it's 2 very different styles. And I'm glad we're on this kind of subject. I wanted to talk to you about this. Mm-hmm. The way Florida plays, I said, was very chaotic, right?
Yeah.
And Vegas, like you're saying, is very controlled and, you know, passes everywhere. But I don't think Vegas is afraid of the chaos. Like, they can hold their own in that type of game, you know? They're big. This is actually coming from the Steve Dangle podcast. They brought up the point. The only player on Vegas's roster that's under 6 foot is Jonathan Marchessault.
Oh my God.
I
didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that.
They're huge.
Yeah, they're not afraid to throw the body around then.
Yeah, so, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing, the difference between Vegas and whoever else Florida played in these playoffs.
Yeah.
Is they're a lot more comfortable pushing back against Florida's, you know, big checks and big, you know, digging into the corners and, you know, Radko Gudas just yelling in your face all the time. You know? Vegas is pushing back against that, and they can hold their own in that type of game. And they're super skilled on the top end. Mm-hmm. You know, that's kind of what Florida's missing is they don't have that top end skill like Vegas does, right? Mm-hmm. Sure, they have some players, Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, Barkov, but it's not at the level of what Vegas's forwards have done.
Yeah.
So I think I'm really enjoying seeing Vegas play both styles of games. So like, you want to get rough and tumble, we'll get rough and tumble. You give us any space to make a pass, we're going to make that pass. So like you're saying, they're looking kind of unstoppable those first two games. And yeah, I agree. This is game 3 is a must win right here.
Yeah, definitely. I think going back to game 2, I believe it was in game 1 where Vegas got their own version of, if you're listening to on audio, the save from the Washington series. Braden Holtby's the save, and it was actually a very similar save with the stick. And again, Vegas was already like kind of in charge before that save had happened.
That game was over.
Yeah, that game was already done, so it wasn't like a game changer the way that 2018 Holtby save was. But man, the momentum, like it's got to be good for Vegas fans from the inaugural season to see that like finally go their way instead of the other way around. Because in 2018, Vegas was not the same team after Braden Holtby made that save.
Yeah, I mean, hockey's a game of momentum, and when your goalie makes a save like that, that's all the momentum in your favor.
It's huge, yeah. Right? Hill has been playing lights out.
Oh yeah, do you want me to read you the stat line right here?
Yeah.
Hill game 1, 943 save percentage. Hill game 2, 935 save percentage.
Which is strange because the insane amount of stat lines that Bob was putting up, I really thought this was going to be a closer series. But again, maybe it's the 2-week rust. Maybe that finals magic, whatever, like it kind of haunted them. I don't know. I really don't know.
In the timeline we are living in, Dallas might have just lost Florida the cup.
Honestly, I think so, because I very much believe that as soon as Vegas kind of finished off that series, I would say not even that. As soon as Vegas went up 3-0, I was like, I think they just won the cup right there. I think the only team that they were going up against that legitimately, had a chance of stopping Vegas was Dallas. Yeah. And they went down 3-0, and sure they managed to make it 3-2, but I don't know. Like I think Dallas had the best chance of stopping them, and they didn't. So.
I don't know, man. If that Florida team if Vegas swept Dallas and they just kept playing games, I would not put it past that Florida team.
So you think it's the rust?
I think it's the rust, right? Like the Bobrovsky we saw in game 1 and game 2 was not the Bobrovsky we saw in the Carolina series.
Or the rest of the playoffs.
Or the rest of the playoffs, right? Like Bobrovsky's stat lines, having them here too, 8-7-9 in game 1. In game 2, 6-9-2, and then he was pulled for Alex Leon, who also didn't put up a great number. He put up 800. Yeah. And Bobrovsky's back in net for game 3, and he's been playing pretty damn well.
Yeah.
Vegas's goals in game 3 have all been power play goals.
Oh, wow.
So, and they were like no chance cross crease, and which I'd put more on the defense than Bob.
Yeah. Going back real quick to the game 2. So yes, it was a pretty bad blowout, 7-2. But what was your thoughts on the composure? Obviously, we saw all those pictures of the very empty Florida bench and 10-minute game misconducts and stuff. What do you think? How does that reflect on the series? Do you think that was a accurate reflection of what's going on in the series or of Florida's mentality? What are your thoughts on all of that?
I mean, I don't know anyone who expected anything different from Florida. This has always been their game, right? You get in the opponent's face, you push them into the boards, you wear them down, and you beat them physically. So when you're getting blown out, and I don't remember what the score was at the time that all the penalties were pushed out, but it was over. Game was over.
Yeah.
Like, of course they're going to do this. This is Florida, right? And this is what they do. They push, and Paul Maurice has been doing an expert job of trying to get penalties in his team's favor, right?
Yeah.
I think, was it the Toronto series where he's sitting on the bench with the 4-1?
Yeah.
Like, this has always been their game, right? Like, get in the face and overwhelm the refs and say, okay, you're not going to call everything. And lo and behold, in the Stanley Cup final, they're kind of calling everything.
Yeah, I'm very surprised by that, honestly. I don't really know. Like, obviously, you can look at this either way. It's biased either towards Vegas or towards Florida, whatever. But there's a lot there. The traditional, just let the boys play in the finals. Haven't really been seeing it this year.
Yeah, can I make a meta point before we go into this conversation?
Yeah.
I always hate discussing reffing, especially in the playoffs. Because whether it's the refs or the hockey culture amongst us fans, we've created this concept of there's no win when you talk about the reffing, right? Like, you can say like, hey, they're calling all of they're not calling any of this, right? then fans say, oh, well, this is the playoffs. You should expect it. The refs put away their whistles. This is how it's always been. But then if you flip it the other way and say, hey, they're calling it way too much for what it should be, then you don't really have a leg to stand on. They're like, hey, a penalty is a penalty. Yeah. Right? So what am I supposed to say here? Am I supposed to just tell her, okay, the refs call what they call and the rest of us just have to deal?
Yeah.
Like there's a no-win way to discuss officiating in the NHL. And the only thing that serves is the refs who get to decide what they want to do on the ice all the time, right?
Yeah.
We as the fans have to do a better thing of calling it out. Like, yes, I understand that it's not going to be called the same way as a regular season, maybe.
Yeah.
My ideal situation would be all the rules should not have any gray area.
Yeah.
And you can review things and you can just call the rules as the rules are written. But I'm saying, okay, that's a stretch too far to get to right now. All I'm asking for is consistency, man.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to call? Like, have some standards.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a limited group of refs that do the playoffs. Not every ref that does the regular season does the playoffs. Only the experienced ones do. And between all of you, you can't come up with some standard, man. Like, okay, I don't even want to get into like suspensions, right? But, you know, there's no winning way to discuss this, like I was saying, right? Like, yes, that was a penalty. And we can argue about whether you should have called it or not. And either way, I'm wrong for even bringing it up.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
there's no civil discussion anymore, it feels like.
Now, putting my soapbox away.
Yeah, no, I understand. Because even I was watching the Nuggets Heat game yesterday, and it felt like at first there were just a bunch of blatant calls on Denver. The game was in Miami. It felt like there was a bunch of blatant calls on Denver, and not the other way around. And then all of a sudden, the refs started calling just random things on Miami, and I was like, make it make sense. There's no consistency. Like I'm at this point, I'm like, I really don't know what's an offensive foul. I don't know what's a defensive foul. I don't know. You know what I mean? I really just feel like you're throwing darts at a board.
You know what really drove the point home for me was a few weeks ago, start of the playoffs. I have a friend with me who doesn't watch hockey. And I was like, oh, you should check this out. Come watch a game with me, right? So we're sitting, we're eating dinner, we're watching the game. I forget what game it is, but something in the first round, right? Then he starts asking me questions about the rules. And he's like, oh, is that a penalty or is that a penalty? And 90% of my answer was, it depends. And that did not feel good, right? This is how a sport grows, right?
Oh, man.
This is the biggest way sport grows, when your friends are into it and you show your friends the sport and say, hey, this is cool, watch this.
Yeah, literal word of mouth. Yeah.
But I'm sitting on the couch like, how do I explain to him that this is basically just a sport run by these 4 officials on the ice, and they'll decide what type of game it is. And who knows?
You ever play a board game that's just way too overly complicated for no reason at all because of all the rules?
Well, I think you're going at the wrong audience. I love complicated board games.
Okay, fair enough. I've played some of those games before, and I'm like, and everyone starts cheering, and I'm like, I did something, I think, and I'm just pretending like to know what the rules are, so I don't look like an idiot. Yeah, that's what it's felt like watching the NHL playoffs so far. Yeah, you know what I mean? And it just, I don't know, like make it make sense. Anyways, but
all right, soapbox away.
Yeah.
Coming back to your point here about officiating.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the officials are doing, the Panthers did not have a power play goal in this series.
Yeah. And their composure being lost and their bench being empty at the end of game 2. I mean, yeah, Vegas bested you in all senses. And I think, me personally, I think it's going to be detrimental. I think that's going to carry over into later on in the series because, sure, it was on Vegas ice. It was early on in the series. They were getting blown out. But when you show that side of yourself, it's really just exposing a certain type of weakness that Vegas knows they can tap into now. Yeah, if they just want to break you down.
I mean, Matt Tkachuk had 3 misconducts in 2 games.
Yeah, dude, and that's the guy who's been saving the Panthers all playoffs.
So that's 10 minutes each. That means he was out for 30 minutes out of 120.
Yeah.
That's a quarter of the time you were sitting in the penalty box. And you might be the best player for Florida.
Yeah. You are the best player, in my opinion. Except maybe Bob.
Yeah, the debate's between him and Bob, right?
Yeah. But you can't put Bob in the box. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, you need to... Florida needs to be better disciplined mentally. Otherwise, this championship is going straight to Vegas, honestly. Yeah. It's too easy for them to tap into.
And regardless of what the situation with the reffing is, you know what it is right now. It's going to be inconsistent. But the one thing I found you can count on NHL refs for is they try to keep the calls even.
Yeah.
So if they call 2 penalties on one team, they're going to call 2 on the other, right? So where does this benefit? I'm going to say this from the point of view of Florida. Where does this benefit Florida? It is when they play a team that doesn't take a lot of penalties or doesn't take a lot of liberties, that team is not going to get called for many penalties. And because refs want to keep it even, they're going to let Florida get away with more because they don't want to call it unevenly on Florida. Mm-hmm. And this is what Paul Maurice knows and why he's doing the 4-1 to the camera, because he's like, you got to even up some calls here, right?
Yeah.
So now when they're playing a team like Vegas, who I said is not afraid to get dirty, it goes one of two ways. Either the refs call nothing or they call everything. Mm-hmm. And Vegas is fine with either one because they have great special teams.
Yeah.
So far, the first two games, and kind of game 3 also, they've called everything.
Yeah.
And Vegas has taken advantage.
Yes.
They've been scored a bunch of power play goals. Florida has not been able to take advantage. They have not scored any power play goals.
Yeah.
And that's been the difference.
Yeah. I definitely don't want to make it seem like special, like officiating or whatever has been the difference maker, because the truth is Florida has had, special teams or like opportunities, and they have not capitalized. Vegas in this game alone, this game 3 alone, all their goals are on the power play. I mean, you gotta step it up at some point.
It's 2-1, 10 minutes left in the third, and Vegas's 2 goals have been on the power play.
Yeah, at some point, Florida's got to step it up, both mentally and just on the special teams. You can't. Officiating is going to happen. Whatever happens, play hockey.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Play better hockey. It's just that simple.
So I just wanted to close one thread from the last episode. We made guesses on who would score the first goals for the playoffs. Yeah. So just to close that thread, first goal was scored by the Panthers, and it was Eric Stahl.
Of all people, yeah.
Which neither one of us, we both picked Tkachuk.
Yeah.
Vegas's first goal, which was second overall, was scored by Jonathan Marchessault, which was my pick there. So taking a little kudos here.
Okay, got it. All right.
All right. Shall we move on to some of the other news around the league?
Yeah.
I think the big team in the news today are the Columbus Blue Jackets. Mm-hmm. 2 big moves. One, they are most likely going to be hiring Mike Babcock at the end of the month when his contract with the Maple Leafs is up. The other, they made a big trade for defenseman Ivan Provorov. So I think Babcock has a lot of history behind it.
Yeah.
And I'll give a quick summary for if those of you who were following the story. But a few years ago, Mike Babcock was fired as head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And was succeeded by Sheldon Keefe. Babcock was known for kind of treating his players poorly. One of the things that came out was in Mitch Marner's rookie year, he asked Mitch to make a list of his teammates from hardest working to least hardest working, and then he released that list to his teammates just to kind of create some drama. There's also been a bunch of other stories of Babcock where he benched Mike Modano when he was sitting at 1499 games played. So Mike Modano will never play 1,500 games in the NHL. Mm-hmm. There was stories about Johan Franzen, who hated playing for Babcock, said he had anxiety and stress about coming to the rink when played for Babcock. That was in Detroit, I believe. So Babcock has kind of gotten this reputation of not treating players well and was kind of fired, and all these stories kind of came out. But now Columbus seems is ready to bring him back into the NHL. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts here?
Well, first of all, Columbus has never shied away from hiring unconventional coaches. As we've seen, I think the most success they've ever had was with John Tortorella behind the bench. And so me personally, I do think this is somewhat of they intentionally hired Babcock for the shock factor, and it's a little bit of a Hail Mary move, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. But really, in my opinion, what does Columbus have to lose? They finished. No, they were almost at the bottom of the league. They didn't win the draft lottery. Got third overall, but they have a good pick coming. And unless a miracle happens this year and they draft, a Cale Makar that's just ready to go and just absolutely amazing, why not? What is there to lose, in my opinion? And the only downside I see is, if Babcock's harshness, I guess you could say, hinders the development of this prospect, assuming he even plays in the NHL this year. Mm-hmm. At this point, Columbus doesn't really have much to lose. Why not shake it up? And it's worked with John Tortorella. The most success that franchise has ever seen is, been with him behind the bench.
Yeah. I think more so than the prospect, there have been concerns about the players Columbus has, namely their top two scorers, Johnny Gaudreau and Patrick Laine, who both have had issues working with difficult coaches in the past.
Yeah.
And if this is the same Mike Babcock that we know, he's a difficult coach.
Yeah.
He will push you. And the reason he's being hired is despite whatever he's done with the players, he's a good coach.
Yeah.
He wins you games.
Yeah. He's won cups with Detroit. Yes.
Yeah. He's won cups and deep playoff runs.
Yeah.
So he has the hockey success part on his resume, but he's kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
That's the trade-off we're going off here, right? Not even kind of. Seems like he is an asshole.
Yeah.
So, Babcock did apologize for the thing with Marner. I'm not sure about the other stuff whatever he said about it. So, is this going to work? Is this the right coach for Columbus? I guess is the concern. And I think you're right that this is kind of a desperation move. We've seen in the past that general managers will fire their coach as like a Hail Mary because this is their last chance to do something, And Kekalainen, the general manager in Columbus, has had a few wins, but a lot of really kind of big losses, right? They weren't able to keep Artemi Panarin around. They made that big offseason where they signed 3 players, including Matt Duchene, to come in at the trade deadline.
Duchene was at a trade, right?
Trade deadline.
Yeah,
and then they weren't able to keep them in the any of them in the offseason.
All 3 of them dipped, yeah.
But then there's moves like where he got Patrick Laine or he got Johnny Gaudreau to sign there. But outside of beating Tampa the 1 year, the Columbus hasn't had any playoff success.
Yeah.
So I think this, for me, my opinion, this is Kekalainen trying to kind of save his job, right? Because if it doesn't work out with Babcock or whoever coach he hires, he's next, right?
Yeah. So I'm glad you actually brought up that offseason. I think it was the 2019 offseason where all 3 of them left, despite, the fact that was the first time they had ever won a playoff, that team had ever won a playoff series, and a very impressive one at that. I've always wondered this, is Columbus just not, sure, it's a small market team, but is that just not a desirable place for any player to go? Because sure, we had Gaudreau signed there, Laine re-signed there, but it seems like a lot of players just don't want to be in Ohio for whatever reason. So
let me ask you to clarify here. By desirable place, do you mean it's Columbus is not a city where they want to live, or do you mean it's not a place they think they can win?
A city they want to live, because there's so many players that, literally Panarin, he left because he wanted to live in a big city that was, thriving or whatever. And I understand, sure, all the jokes aside, Ohio has, had its problems and stuff. And, that's true even in the NBA. But for me, I'm just is that the real reason that Columbus has not been able to retain talent the same way, Arizona has or whatever, hasn't been able to?
I think it's a factor, but I don't think you can pin that, because outside of a few marquee cities, nowhere really has that kind of draw, right? For example, Columbus will never measure up to LA or New York,
or Vegas.
Yeah. Just those big, shiny, glittery cities, right? For the Canadians who grew up in Toronto, maybe they want to play in Toronto, play for their hometown Leafs, right? It'll never shine up to that, right?
Yeah.
But is Columbus really any that different than San Jose or Anaheim?
Or Vancouver or something, yeah.
Yeah, Vancouver's very expensive. I'm leaving Canadian cities out of it because they'll always have hometown people.
Yeah.
Or Nashville, is it really any that different?
Yeah.
And this is pro sports, right? Winning trumps all.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That just means you're going to have a harder time getting people in free agency. Granted.
Yeah.
But that's not the only way to get players, right?
Yeah.
You have to develop through a draft. You have to be able to trade. And as soon as you have an inkling of, oh, hey, this might be a good core, then you're going to start getting free agents, because winning trumps all.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I kind of just thought of this. Before Michael Jordan was, Michael Jordan, and the Bulls were what they were, I believe the general manager, Jerry Krause, he was not exactly a likable dude, but he assembled a absolute god tier dynasty of a team. People wanted to start going to Chicago to play. Chicago Bulls, in the 90s, it was a brand name at that point. It wasn't just a team, and they had no championships before MJ joined the team.
They transcended basketball.
Yeah, basically, and so that's why I say bringing in unconventional leadership I don't think is always like necessarily, especially if they know what they're doing and they have a winning pass.
Mhm.
Is it really like a bad idea? You got to like, like if let's be real. If Columbus was a dynasty, players would be going there more often.
Yeah,
Way more.
Yeah,
way more.
let's take a recent example. Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Is there some giant allure to living in Tampa?
There's not. I literally was thinking that right now. I was like, if Tampa had the success that they had like in the past couple of years, who would go there?
Yeah.
They would go to like Florida or something.
Then you're looking at, okay, I'm going to go to Tampa because it has nice weather and because I get less taxes. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But this is, like I said, winning trumps all, right?
Yeah.
So the biggest draw to go to Tampa is that this is a team that can win.
Yes.
And has players that can win.
Yeah.
And where do they get those players? Drafting.
Yeah.
Stamkos, Hedman, Vasilevsky, all draft picks.
Yeah. So that's why I personally am not too upset about the Babcock hire. Sure, I'm not even going to lie, it is a controversial one. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure how it'll play out at all. But I don't think we should be so quick to dismiss it because one, we need to see has Babcock changed as he claims to have.
We might get a different Babcock.
Yes. Yeah. And like if he's changed, then great. Then like he still has a winning experience. You got to try something new every once in a while.
Yeah.
Columbus has shown time and time again that John Tortorella is the most successful coaching. His coaching staff has been like the most successful one in the franchise.
Yeah.
I think, I don't think anyone should simply dismiss Columbus for, what they've done with this hire because it's really way too early to tell. Let's just see how it plays out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I hear you on that. You should be trying something new. I think a lot of the critics or the pushback is, why isn't trying something new getting someone from college or getting someone from the AHL?
Because Babcock he has a winning record.
Yeah,
sure. He's not the greatest person. He might have changed. I don't know.
Yeah,
but he's won cups. He's had deep playoff runs.
Yeah,
you can't argue that.
You know what? You're right. And if it was Kekalainen, if this really is Kekalainen's job on the line,
what does he have to lose at this point?
No, I mean, also, if this really is his job on the line, are you going to trust someone who's never coached in the NHL? Or are you going to trust, even if he is kind of an asshole, someone who's coached and won in the NHL, right?
Again, not even to keep going back to San Jose as an example, but David Quinn joined the first year Mike Greer was there. Mike Greer's not getting fired after 1 year, especially after having a GM before him that was like 20 years there or whatever.
The situation's different, right? Yes. San Jose's just starting their rebuild.
Yes.
Columbus has kind of been at the bottom for a while now, or just barely making the playoffs, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it is a gamble. It is definitely a Hail Mary move, but in my opinion, what the hell do they have to lose?
True.
I think there's either they fail and they keep collecting draft picks, or it works out. I don't see how this can be any worse than where they're at right now.
Let me ask you this question. Then. Yeah. How many years does Mike Babcock get?
I would say probably 2 to 3 max.
2 to 3.
Maybe 2 max, honestly, at this point.
For a team that's this year in the draft lottery.
Why? You don't think that's enough?
I don't think that's enough. 2 years?
The only reason I say that is because, I mean, imagine if Joel Quenneville all of a sudden came back. You're not gonna you got to see if he's a changed person or not, right? Like,
oh, I see what you mean by
what if he there's players being on the line.
Yeah, so you're saying give him like a 2-year contract and
see how it goes.
Yeah, if he's a nicer person or he's not clashing with your players yet, then you can give him some more years to win.
Yes.
You're not saying he has to start a winning team in 2 years.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't have to start. He doesn't have to build a winning team. He doesn't have to build a dynasty. Let's just see if he's changed first of all.
Okay, gotcha.
You know what I mean?
So you're saying slow roll this?
Yeah, because I don't. Truthfully, unless somehow Columbus, got Bedard, which they didn't, or they probably won't.
I mean, this is supposed to be a deep draft. Whoever they get they have the third pick, right? Whoever they get at third might play in the NHL this year.
Sure, but I don't think it's a cup winning team. Even then, even with Gaudreau and Laine, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think they're done basically. So let's see how this Babcock hire plays out. But I don't think it's necessarily one to dismiss early on. I think honestly, dare I say it might work. I think it will work. So we'll see.
What are you counting as work? Playoffs?
Or at least very close to it. At least even if they make the playoffs and get swept in the first round, that's a win to me. Because you can build off of that, I think.
Yeah.
Or if you get really close to the just shows some sort of improvement from the past couple of years. Because it's not been great in Columbus. They lost
since 19.
Since 19, and even in 19, they lost Duchesne, and then, Bob, and Panarin.
And then in the bubble, Columbus beat
Toronto. But that was more Toronto choked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like how you can't keep relying on fortune. You need to like truly build a good team. And I think this is a good inception point.
Okay.
Yeah.
We shall see. I think I'm going to be interested in what happens with Gaudreau and Laine. Do they want out of town now? Mm-hmm. Those are two very good players.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing Columbus did real quick was trade for Ivan Provorov.
Mm-hmm. Another controversial one.
Yeah. If you guys remember from our episode 2 or something like that.
It was the first one, actually.
Maybe episode 1. Yeah. Ivan Provorov kind of started this trend of not wearing Pride jerseys. So he's in Columbus now and solidifying that back end with Zach Werenski. Yeah, we shall see. These are... I think you're right. More and more with more moves Columbus makes, it's looking like a Hail Mary. They got to do something this year.
But there's also some teams that just, thrive being the villain, if you want to put a label on it, we've seen it in the NFL, we've seen it in the NBA.
Look at Vegas.
Yeah, we've seen it. Yeah. Everyone hates Vegas, and they're about to win their first cup in 6 years.
All right, hey, there's still a couple 3 minutes left in this game. It's still 2-1.
Yeah, no, no, this is done in 5.
Yeah,
as I predicted.
All right. I think that's everything for this one. You got anything else here?
No, I think that's it. But I am very interested to see how Columbus plays out in the offseason. They might make some bigger moves. In bigger trades, bigger signings in the offseason. I don't know. I think it's a team to keep a watch of because I was very shocked that Babcock was back. I didn't think he was coming back anytime soon. So I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting story to watch as the offseason goes on.
Absolutely. So this has been Glass Seats. We're out every week, and by next episode, we might have a Stanley Cup champion.
I think we will.
All right. So you can find us on Spotify, Apple, and Google. We are also on YouTube. So you can find us on YouTube at Spud Network Podcast is the handle. Go ahead and you can also leave us a comment or leave us a review or a rating wherever you guys listen to the show. Really helps us out. We'll catch you next episode. See ya.
Peace.